College football could be headed towards another seismic shift, the SEC preparing to break away from the rest of the field.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He's Jay Smith of Unfair Sports. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire at USA Today Sports. And the top story is coming out of Destin, Florida, where the SEC commissioner and the conference administrators, or team administrators, program administrators, are meeting at the SEC spring to summer meetings, Jay. And the biggest thing coming out is that Greg Sankey is about fed up with the rest of you college football fans and teams and programs and conferences out there.
Yeah, and it seems that a lot of people are trying to take the approach of Sankey is walking in with the gun, shooting somebody, and then turning to the camera and saying, "Why would you do this to college football?" As if he is the one that's actually initiated all of this. No, you have to remember, all of this started just because Oklahoma wanted to play Nebraska at night. And after that, all of this has fallen apart. Every team has started shifting and going other places. All this realignment is creating a big, painful, just reshaping of what college football looks like. And it's funny because I'm seeing these articles as if it's really on Sankey making these decisions. And truth be told, it sounds like, based upon his press, the press conference, John, that Greg Sankey and the SEC, for the most part, most of the teams have not been in unanimous agreement on any of the changes we've seen with the playoffs or any of that stuff. For them, it's look, you could put out your press releases and everything to chastise the good of the game when it comes to the SEC, as if the SEC is the cause of all these problems. No, other conferences started to poaching of other teams. And then, the SEC's not going to sit around and sit idly. That's how you die. Ask the Pac-12 about that. So when the Big Ten decided that they really wanted Nebraska and Oklahoma just wanted to play Nebraska at night, here we are. And the good thing for the Big Ten is that they get to continue to enjoy the pains that Oklahoma was dealing with as Texas is playing Ohio State at flipping noon, big noon, to start the season off. Terrible. So I am with Paul Sankey on this one. He is making some great points and pointing out that he don't need to put no press releases out there. He don't need to preach the good of the game. He wants to find ways for the SEC and this sport to move forward. He ain't trying to fight with all of them. Let's just find some steps to move forward.
Yeah, if you want to talk about conference realignment being an issue, it's been an issue in college football for 40 years. The Southwest Conference died because of conference realignment. The Big East as a football conference died because of conference realignment. Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC was not the first, shot over the bow in conference realignment. It's not the first major change that occurred over the last 30, 40 years. It's the most recent one, but then actually not even the most recent one. The Big Ten going after USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington came after that too. So I get why people are concerned about what the SEC is pushing for. And really it comes back to, if we're going to expand again in the college football playoff, we want X number of teams as automatic bids to the playoff. And the number is settling on 4. I'm not for that. I'm not for the Big Ten and the SEC getting automatic bids, but I understand why the SEC and the Big Ten are pushing for it. And if you're asking a conference commissioner to look out for the good of the American Athletic Conference or the Big 12 or the ACC, you're not asking him the right questions.
Nope.
Greg Sankey's responsibility isn't to the Big 10, to the Big 12, to the ACC. His responsibility is to his member schools in the SEC. Just like Joe Castiglione's responsibility isn't to look out for what Arizona State's best interests are. That's not what his job is. His job is to look out for the best interests of the University of Oklahoma. Greg Sankey's best interests, his job is to look out for the best interests of the SEC. So let's quit mudding the field. Let's quit mudding the conversation up a little bit and quit asking Greg Sankey to look out for the good of the game when, to be fair, you listen to his comments, he kind of is looking out for the good of the game. He mentioned down there in Destin that he and his membership weren't all that interested in moving to a 12-team playoff. They were fine at 4. And he mentioned that they would have had half of the college football playoff field in 2024. So what are we even asking here? If you're expecting Greg Sankey to not be looking out for the best interests of the SEC, then you're kind of naive. And I know I get accused of that a lot of times on this show because I'm looking out for I'm hopium, I'm optimistic. Sometimes that leads me down some naivety. But come on, do not miss the point of what a commissioner does. Again, it's like asking Roger Goodell to be concerned about Major League Baseball. He's not going to be. He didn't care about what Major League Baseball is doing because his job is to represent the NFL and to make the NFL as much money as possible. Greg Sankey's job is to represent the SEC and make the SEC as much money as possible.
Exactly. And for the record, as you mentioned, SEC did not, they opposed that 12-teamer. But now that they're trying to expand it, which I don't think majority of the SEC teams, I don't know where Oklahoma stands on that, but I don't know. I bet you majority of the SEC teams, or at least a half and half, are split on the idea of now going to 16. But the other thing is that if we're going to continue to add teams into the playoff pool, of course, the SEC and the Big Ten, which are the two biggest conferences with the most tradition, with the most fans, the deepest traditions, they're going to be asking for automatic bids. And rightfully so. They're the money makers. They're the reason why a lot of people come and watch college football. They're not the only reason. Don't get that twisted. People watch. Oklahoma has a massive following regardless of good or bad. Texas does as well. So you're going to see eyeballs on screens when they play games. So, John, when it comes to that component of it, the expectation is that the SEC should get the ability to have some guaranteed spots. They're just like, the Big Ten and the Big 12. They've got they have the most teams in their conference. So you've got to find a way to line it up to where you get that auto bid and use that as a way to play into the playoffs. Make that like the conference championship like bracket. The top 4 teams work their way down into the playoffs. That will be awesome if we did that, to be able to cut down on as many games as we have. Like, I know a lot of people want more games in college football. John, I don't. I would like having additional to an extent. Too many games is going to start eating into everything else that happens in the college football. And that's why we're in this conundrum today, dealing with the transfer portal stuff. Look, it all still has to line up with the actual academic schedule. It makes it a pain in the butt to try to figure out how to get kids in and out, especially when it comes to transfers. And you got to let kids have that ability. Coaches can take jobs in other places. Students and players should be able to have the ability to go, or counterpoint, your school can be allowed to kick somebody out or put somebody out of the school that you don't like anymore. So if you want to have both, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have the school have the ability to just push people out without players having the ability to make the decision to go somewhere else. And to me personally, I like it because it clears up space for you to go get a player that you would consider to be better fit for what your program is trying to do.
And so based on reports out there, like the SEC granted Greg Sankey the power to look for an exit out of the NCAA, which is kind of crazy. At the same time, not desperate times, but when you are the SEC or the Big Ten and you have as much influence as you have over the sport, you kind of get your way. And that's just the long and short of it. The SEC drives the conversation. And I know other conferences, other fan bases don't want to hear that, and they don't want to admit to that. But the SEC drives the football conversation in college football. And as much as maybe I'm not even a fan of 4 automatic bids to the playoff in a 16-team playoff, Greg Sankey's not asking my opinion on this. And we know where that conference stands on it. They want 4 teams. They're going to get 4 teams, or we're heading down the road of a potential super league. and just completely breaking away from the college football playoff, breaking away from the NCAA. And people prophesied over this several years ago during conference realignment. It might be coming to fruition over the next few years. What might be coming to fruition soon? The Oklahoma Sooners are landing inside the top 6 for a couple blue chip prospects we'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, we're going to talk a little recruiting now as the Oklahoma Sooners landed inside the top 6 for a couple blue chip prospects. First, let's talk about Drew Evers, because somebody asked over on the YouTube side, what's going on with offensive line recruiting? Well, here we go. Drew Evers, the brother of former Oklahoma quarterback Nick Evers, included Oklahoma in his top 6. He's the number 13 interior offensive lineman in the 247 Sports composite.
Yeah, and Drew Evers is really, really good. 6'3.5". I mean, he's listed at 285. I know he's a little bit bigger than that, and the kid can play. And I'm going to be honest with you all, he likes Oklahoma. He really likes Bill Bedenbaugh. So the Sooners are legitimate targets. They're legitimate potential for him when it comes to landing and recruiting. And the kid's good, got good mobility. I say Hayes Fawcett has him listed at 6'4", 302. So, you know, their listings are completely different than what they actually have on their site, but I digress. They usually do that and update it as they go through camps. But Drew is one that he's legitimately a possibility for Oklahoma, and he's got a great list. He's got SMU, which he's from Flower Mound. So you've got the local team, and SMU has been... they've been throwing them dollars out there to get these kids. Ohio State, LSU, Penn State, A&M, and then Oklahoma. And so you've got some legitimate competition from schools that do a really good job at developing offensive linemen and send them to the league. I think Oklahoma has an actual chance, and Bill Bedenbaugh has a chance with Drew Evers. And like you mentioned, his brother Nick did play at Oklahoma, transferred out. He ended up at Wisconsin and then finished up so far at UConn. But what I've heard is that there's not any hard feelings on the Oklahoma side. It was, another reason, but the family still loves Bill Bedenbaugh. They still enjoy Brent Venables. They still enjoy Oklahoma. So there's a very good chance that Oklahoma is going to be in the Final 4 or 2 for Drew Evers.
Told Steve Wiltfong, I could literally see myself playing for each of these final 6. And then on Oklahoma says, known them since my older brother played there. Coach Venables is a great man of character, and Coach B has a track record that is second to none for the O-line. Dude's got over 40 offers. So, I mean, he's an impressive cat. Again, an interior offensive line prospect that moves really, really well. Someone that's going to be an impact player at guard and has been on Oklahoma's radar for a long, long time and has been heavily connected, has visited a ton. Even after Nick left, he's visited a bunch with the Sooners. And again, that track record that Coach Bill Bedenbaugh boasts, I think that's going to put them in the mix for any offensive line target that they want to be in the mix on. But it's going to be a difficult recruitment when you've got these big time programs also coming at him as well. The other one that they entered into the top 6 for, that's Craig Dandridge, wide receiver out of Georgia, number 309 prospect in the 247 Sports composite, the number 38 player in the state of Georgia, according to 247 Sports composite. But again, has a big time offer sheet: Tennessee, Stanford, Arkansas, Clemson, Duke, Georgia, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Kansas State, Florida, a lot of big time programs also coming after this kid.
Yeah, he's got a lot of the big programs after him. He has a very impressive list of teams. Like, again, the one thing that I like to do when it comes to a prospect, regardless of where they're located, who is interested in them, who has given the offer, and who do they feel like has the best chance of landing them. And he's on the list of Georgia. And Georgia's produced some pretty solid wide receivers. You've also got the Tennessees of the world, Clemson, Florida, Kansas, Arkansas. A lot of schools that are known for putting up some good wide receivers, they're on the list. And luckily, Oklahoma is there too. Roughly 6'1", 170 at wide receiver. But he's based out of the state of Georgia. And so it's going to be a challenge to pull him away from home because it's really hard to get kids out of the state of Georgia that's ranked high enough. UGA does a really good job of taking care of home. Same thing with Georgia Tech, especially if you can get in there academically. But Dandridge liked Oklahoma, and I know that he's planning a trip out. He's trying to work on the OV, and I think the plan is to try to get here on the 20th, which is the Champion Barbecue weekend, the big weekend. So you'll see Oklahoma probably have their 2 big weekends full of just prospects galore from the 6th to the 20th. There are going to be a lot of prospects and a lot of opportunities to try to sweeten the pot of getting players to come in. I know that Jaden O'Neal's definitely going to be there on the 20th. If he's still in the car with Oklahoma, there's a good chance he'll be there trying to do more peer recruiting like he's been doing this entire time. So my expectation is that Oklahoma's going to offer up a great opportunity to play. Honestly, he could probably play borderline immediately because we're going to be losing some pretty solid receivers here in the coming class that he can make his way here and be impactful pretty early.
He told Steve Wiltfong, it was a great vibe all around from everyone. Coach Venables is a coach that serves the soul of his players and has built his staff around that mindset. It's good to know that they truly care about their players on and off the field. OU definitely does compete with some of the other schools on my radar. So yeah, he was in town back in March, visited Norman then, but you got to get him back on for an OV, especially with one of these big recruiting weekends coming up. If you can get him there for the 20th, that'd be great. But sounds like, again, it's going to be a big pull if you are trying to get him out of the state of Georgia. As you look over the next couple of weeks, I know you've developed some of your visit lists for June 6th and for the Champion Barbecue. Let's just talk about the one that's going to be not this weekend, but the following weekend. We know Bo Bentley is going to be in town, but who's the name on that list, Jay, that you're looking at and you think that's a dude that I really want Oklahoma to be able to land?
If this does happen, now, he has dropped his top 4 and Oklahoma was not on the list, but I'm not going to, lose my mind on it. But if they get him on campus, I think Oklahoma has a legitimate chance. And that's Sincere Johnson, the linebacker out of Cleveland, Ohio area, 6'3", 235 pounds. He's built specifically for a Brent Venables defense. And he is a heat-seeking missile. I was talking to actually Reggie Powers III's dad, RP2, and he was telling me he's watched the kid because, we have a little pipeline to Ohio here as of late. If you notice, going from Reggie, you had Kendall Dobie, who's also from Ohio, Caden Woodard, who's also from Ohio. We've been pulling some Ohio kids over the last, couple of years under the Brent Venables regime. And so if you can get Sincere to show up on campus, because he did thoroughly enjoy his visit and said that Oklahoma is one that he could definitely look at for his future. You get him on campus, I think that there's a chance that Oklahoma could try to sway him away from that unfortunate the medicine that they put in the water there, which is Ohio State, and just kind of like LSU does with the people in Louisiana. They got this voodoo thing going on to where you automatically got to go to that school when you're a top player. So if Oklahoma can find a way to get like an antidote poured into the water when he comes to visit to flush out the Ohio State thought process and bring him into the mindset of becoming an SEC player instead, Oklahoma may have a chance. He's one. The other one that I know that all the kids are wondering about, they've been asking about offensive linemen like crazy, John. Deacon Schmidt, OT out of Colorado, IMG kid. If Oklahoma can make sure to get him on, I think we have like probably the best chance of landing the kid out of Windsor, Colorado, but man, I know that the Buffs are really pushing hard to try to keep kids that are from their state in state. But I think Oklahoma has a really good chance of pulling him in. I know that they're the favorite in a lot of places right now. But Deacon Schmidt would be awesome. And that was when you're going to start seeing the snowball effect of offensive linemen.
Deacon Schmidt, just a perfect offensive lineman name, by the way. Like,
it really is.
I don't know if y'all do that, but I do that. You just look at names and like, yeah, Deacon Schmidt, you either play offensive line or defensive tackle. Those are the only two positions you can play. So they're
true.
His parents really hooked him up well with that name. So we'll see. It's going to be a big recruiting month for Oklahoma in the month of June. We'll continue to follow that, track that as visits happen. I'm sure crystal balls and future casts and on-3 predictions will come following those visits as well. So we'll see where Oklahoma lands on some of these top prospects here in the next few weeks. But coming up, Jim Nagy, he's been a big part of Oklahoma's recruiting strategy and transfer portal moves. He's got a big request that he put out there. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, there's nobody out there that does social media quite like Jim Nagy. Maybe a Lane Kiffin, but in college football, everybody's kind of buttoned up. They're all trying to, put their best foot forward. Jim Nagy, man, he's just out there having a good time. And I think it's a strong representative for Oklahoma that your general manager plays the social media game pretty well. He always did when he was part of the Senior Bowl, and he's just carried that over to his new role as GM of Oklahoma.
Yeah, he does a really good job of tweeting out the players that he really liked, especially with the Senior Bowl. It's probably my favorite thing to do. If you go back and just dig through his archives, you start finding these little gems out there. And then you recognize one thing, John. Jim Nagy knows what he's doing. I think that's the one thing that you start to recognize and take in consideration. Like, oh no, he actually does have a type, and a lot of his types end up, going to the league and may not be an instant impact, but a lot of them are in the league, and then some make a big impact quick, some don't. But he has a very good eye and knack for it, and so he felt the need to go out there and put out a little bit of a demand, about an $81 million one to be exact. It's a lot of money. But at the same time, more so tongue-in-cheek joke, he put a tweet out there and said, OU is looking for a football equivalent of this dude in recruiting, #baller. Well, that was a picture of Alex Caruso, who just recently signed a 4-year, $81 million deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Of course, he's watching NBA playoffs right now. And I thought that was pretty interesting that he threw out there a guy that's known for being scrappy and a grinder and who's willing to play their role because they know that they're going to get their honeypot in the end, in which Oklahoma City did reward him with a very nice contract because they have the ability to do that right now. Well, the Oklahoma Sooners are going to be in similar situations. They're going to have certain spots where they're going to be able to put additional money at this player or that player over time as we figure out this revenue sharing thing. And so they're going to look for those dudes that are going to be out there grinding and being scrappy. Well, he also did it last night when he was talking about another player. He said, OU is looking for the football equivalent of this dude in recruiting, #clutch, talking about J-Dub, Jalen Williams. John, that's the perfect tweet to put out right now because we're in the midst of recruiting. As we just talked about last segment, we're starting to see visits. Visits are being lined up. Kids are starting to put out their top teams. And we'll talk, of course, that more thoroughly over time. But that is becoming a big deal right now. We're now in what we would consider true recruiting season. Because as these OVs in June usually happen, this is when you start seeing your commitments. June, July, early August. It's always been the Oklahoma Sooners schedule. Their goal is to get majority of the class in by the beginning of August, right before the first game of the season. That way they can focus on ball and, try to propel us to the top level. But I think that Nagy, he's got a type, and that type is NFL prospect.
Well, and what's interesting here is I think he's doing some good crowdsourcing as well. So they're going to watch a lot of guys, but they're not going to be able to watch every guy.
Nope.
But if a coach drops a kid's tape into the reply, or the player comes responding saying, hey, take a look at mine. He's like, okay, I'll take a look. I don't know if he does, but you'd be more apt to look at a kid if he drops himself in the reply and saying, coach, I'm clutch, or coach, I'm scrappy. I'm the dude you're looking for. And so it's kind of a nice little crowdsourcing function that Jim Nagy's putting out there, as opposed to trying to scour the tapes of 100,000 high school football players. He's going to have them come to him a little bit too. And when you're at the University of Oklahoma, you can do that a little bit. And so it's a fascinating one, but you know that he's going to be looking for traits. Like, he's certainly looking for types of players that are going to have NFL traits, that are going to have, even if they don't have, strong NFL traits, they're going to have a certain kind of attitude about the game. And in response to the Alex Caruso one, I wrote out there, I replied, I said, hey, Nico Jandro kind of sounds like who you're looking for. And he's like, yeah, he definitely is. He's a scrappy type of player, and he is. He's a heat-seeking missile. The dude's really tough, plays fast, plays aggressive, plays scrappy, plays, pest type football.
Yes.
Someone's just going to be in your face all the time. And they're kind of looking for that aggressive mindset. And I think it's fun to watch, man. And it's fun to watch just Jim Nagy just having a good time with it too. So much of college football and sports anymore is so serious. As we talked about in the first segment, it impacts a lot of people and a lot of things, but it's just good to see your GM having a little bit of fun out there on social media.
Absolutely. You want a guy that can relate with the young peoples, as they would say. We don't want an old man screaming at the clouds. You want somebody that's actually going to be able to relate to the kids. But as you mentioned, John, Nagy's eye, as good as it can be, he can't be the only one, which is why he's putting together a team. He's assembling a staff of people that will be able to do a lot. It feels like he's got the Avengers coming behind him, because every time I turn around, somebody's saying there's somebody new joining the staff. He talked to J.D. Piquel weeks ago, and we talked about this, that he was going to be adding some more staff members and potentially adding one that has more NFL experience than him, which that would be awesome to see and hear. We're waiting for that, but it sounds like Nagy is adding another person to staff. I don't know if you recognize this, but Oklahoma is set to hire UCLA Director of Player Personnel Stacey Ford. That was tweeted out late yesterday. Ford has spent time at UCLA since March of 2024, but he also worked in 2022 and 2023 at Washington State with Ben Arbuckle. And so he's out here going after dudes that have some NFL background. He started as an intern with the Raiders, and he's kind of moved around from there, but they're starting to build out this staff of guys with the eye for NFL type talent. And I think it's pretty huge that he's also seeing guys that have worked with some of the coaching staff before. So that past relationship makes it really easy to integrate who is going after the priorities and the types of players that they know the coach wants. I mean, he was there from 22 and 23 while Ben Arbuckle was there at Washington State. So obviously he's highly recommended by Ben, because he was there, as a I think he was a director of player personnel there as well. And he was helping, Ben Arbuckle find some of these diamonds in the rough, players like a John Mateer type. Y'all want more of those, right? Now, the unfortunate thing is for a lot of these Sooner fans out there is, if you go after that, you're not going to guarantee to get only 5 stars. You're going to find some very high hidden gem 3 stars that's going to upset a lot of our delegation, John. I'm not sure how they're going to feel about getting really good players that aren't rated very high.
Trust the offers. If Jim Nagy, Brent Venables, and that staff are offering players, you got to imagine that they've got something. And that's just where I'm going to come down to is, you can look at the recruiting rankings, you can look at the stars, and do they matter? Sure, they're going to matter to an extent. But I'm going to trust a Jim Nagy and a Brent Venables more than I'll trust my own eyes, more than I'll trust the star ratings, because they've seen it, they've done it, they've found good talent for the better part of 20 years at the collegiate, and then Jim Nagy at the NFL level. So if you want to look at the stars and be like, oh, he's not very good because he's only a 3-star, or he's an unrated prospect, if that's all you're going to go off of, okay, that's fine. But again, let's trust Ben Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator, who's put together really good offenses. Let's trust Brent Venables, who's been one of the best defensive coordinators in college football for the last 25 years. Let's trust Jim Nagy, who again has been a part of 2 Super Bowl championship teams and was a part of the Senior Bowl, unearthing a lot of talent there at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. Trust the process. Not to steal from the Sixers a little bit, but I want to steal from them. Just trust the process. Not everybody, and we've seen 5 stars not hit. Like we've seen, in recent years, we've seen 5 stars not hit.
Boy, have we.
And that could have been an evaluation process from Lincoln Riley and even under the Brent Venables regime.
That's
trust
true.
The process. Just trust the process. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Sooner. I think Nagy's going to find some of the really good ones. Just a hunch.
He already is.